We are live.
Hello and welcome to Sunshine Cathedral, Christians and Cocktails. We are glad that you're here with us this evening. We are live, and anything can happen while we are live. God only knows what may or may not happen on this episode of Christians and Cocktails, but we are glad that you are here with us this evening. As you can see, we have wonderful folks who are gathering with us this evening. Of course, we have our senior minister, the Reverend Dr. Darrell Watkins. We have Dennis McWilliams and his husband, Tito McWilliams. Dennis is the chair of our Sunshine Cathedral Board of Directors, and his husband is the at will, can you do this anytime, moment, any place, fill in for everything. We also have Reverend Kevin Tisdale with us tonight, who is the Director of Lay and Volunteer Ministries at the Sunshine Cathedral. And you may recognize her. She's back with us again. It's the Reverend Terry Steve Pierce, who's the Senior Pastor of Joy MCC up in Orlando. And so we're glad that the panelists here with us this evening. We're glad that you have joined us live on Facebook this evening. Just a pre-announcement, just as a reminder, we do midday prayer every day, Monday through Saturday at noon. Christians and Cocktails are of course, it's on Mondays at 6 p.m. And then on Wednesdays, we have Share in the Chair. And we'll talk a little bit more about the upcoming Share in the Chair person a little bit later in our programming here. But for now, we're off to Christians and Cocktails. And good evening to everyone and a happy toast to everyone as we begin. Glasses up, whatever you got going on. Let's let it roll, Reverend Dr. Darrell Watkins. Let's do it.
Well, first, I want to tell a story. I grew up as a kid loving Charles Nelson Reilly. Charles Nelson Reilly, he's the one who let me know early in life there was a place in the world for me.
All right.
And he was on a Match Game all the time. He was one of the panelists. He was on a children's show when I was a kid called Lidsville. He was Hoodoo, the bad guy, the magician, in this little world of hats that hat people. And it made sense if you were 8. And so anyway, I just loved him, right? He was funny. He went on to become a big director and whatever. I think he was in the original production of Hello, Dolly even. So Charles Nelson Reilly. Well, one of the things that I also knew about Charles Nelson Reilly is that he was on The Tonight Show all the time. I thought he was like permanent cast, like Ed McMahon. Why is he always on The Tonight Show? Well, the reason is people get sick, people get delayed, people have work things that overlap. People get stuck traveling. And so guests would just not be there. And he lived around the corner from the studios, from the NBC studios. So whenever they had a last minute cancellation, they would call Charles Nelson Reilly, who would literally walk to the studio and fill in. So if you would notice the only lady in our panel tonight, I would like to introduce her, Charles Nelson Reilly. So we had a series of cancellations, and then the subs had to cancel and blah, blah. This show is at 6 o'clock. I contacted her at 5:20. She's a busy person, but here she is. So I love Charles Nelson Reilly, and I love Terry C. Pierce. So that's, I just needed to let people know that a busy, successful pastor with a thing to do at 7, by the way, made time for us very last minute. So the hero of the day is Terry C. Pierce.
Right. I've changed my name. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm now Charles.
Oh, look at that.
Love it. I love it.
That's probably
right.
I'll speak to that.
So the planned special guest for tonight is Reverend Kevin. And but let's see. Let's just, for the sake of not throwing new people to the wolves. Dennis, why don't you ask us our first question?
Okay, sure. Well, let's see. I think we had one on here that's been here a little while. Let's, no, I guess not. Well, since we're a Christian church, I'm wondering, why do we have so many different references to so many other religions when you preach?
I know who asked that question. And he just asked the question.
There's a bus rolling.
Right.
right.
No. It's, some people, Robert used to pastor a church in Hagerstown, Maryland. He founded that church. It was a wonderful church right downtown. And I was with him for a year before I took a church in New Jersey, which is, of course, where I met Reverend Kevin. We're going to get to Kevin Bacon before I'm at the end of it. But when I was in Hagerstown, I forget this woman's name. I don't think she was a regular, but I was on the preaching schedule. I preached one Sunday, and I forget if I quoted something from the Upanishads or a prayer from Thich Nhat Hanh or something. It was just something from beyond whatever tradition she was familiar with. And she sent Robert this scathing letter and about how she was, like she was so just terrified. She felt like the place was contaminated. She wanted to start rebuking and binding demons. And of course, it's all to serve a point, right? So like if the point in the gospel is, love your neighbor. Well, yeah, I may quote 7 other people who said, love your neighbor, I don't think that's a competition. I don't think I'm upstaging the gospel. The point is, this is so universally true. God keeps saying it in ways that people can hear it. And so that's why we do it. It's not a competition. It's sort of reinforcing what we have discovered to be true. And Jesus said, I remember his apostles one time said, these people are healing in your name. That means they're healing like you heal. They're doing what you do. They're doing your shtick, but they're not part of us. Tell them to stop. And Jesus said, if they're not against us, they're for us.
Amen.
There's plenty of healing to go around. Let them do their healing because, we're not going to get to everybody. Let them heal some folks.
Okay.
And so I just think that love is universal. I also remember like Jesus was grounded in his Jewish tradition. He knew his tradition. He knew his scriptures. And yet his scripture says in the book of Deuteronomy that Canaanites should be slain on the spot. And here comes a Canaanite woman with her daughter who has some sort of distress. And she asks Jesus to heal her. And this Canaanite woman's faith is praised and she gets the miracle she's looking for. A Roman centurion, to have been a person of privilege and position in the Roman Empire, had to at least nominally be a Roman pagan. He had to be part of the system. He wasn't going to be some renegade centurion. And the centurion comes to Jesus to heal his servant, his friend, his lover. We have all kinds of discussions about that. But again, Jesus praises his faith and then heals his friend. So I don't think Jesus has a lot of hangups about that sort of thing. It seems to me that Jesus just wants people loved and healed and blessed. And so if Thich Nhat Hanh can reinforce that message, if the Baha'i faith can reinforce that message, if the Gnostic Gospels can reinforce that message, I don't mind weaving those in. And they're going to touch somebody that something else wouldn't, because invariably someone will say, I even once quoted Joseph Smith, someone just were beside themselves. And yet a former Mormon came to me and said, I've never heard that outside of a Mormon church. And so it's, like Jesus is my thing. Jesus is my tradition. The Christian spirituality is in my bones. And hopefully so much so that it is not threatened by other vocabularies and other experiences and other euphemisms. And so we, like the Apostle Paul, I think we just, try to be all things to all people that we might reach some.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why we do it.
And I think also, I'll throw my 2 cents in. I asked the question, but I kind of asked it for others that may not be as familiar with us. I think it shows the unity that we all have, our oneness. It shows the divine in each religion, and it just pulls us all together, I think. So I did ask the question, and so I thought I'd ask the question.
And the truth is, even if you just don't get to be a Christian purist because we were never pure. We came out of another tradition and we immediately started reaching out to other traditions. So if we're going to take out anything that smells of paganism, we just lost Christmas and Easter. Yeah. And if we're going to take out anything that's Jewish, we just lost Pentecost and the entire Old Testament. And if we're going to take out anything that was come up with by Jewish people, we just lost the whole New Testament. And so this idea that it has to say Christian and be from, the council of this or council of that is just, I think, needlessly narrow-minded. In fact, I think we're being more I think we're following Jesus more faithfully by being more open.
Amen.
Anything else? We got 3 other clergy on the thing. What you got?
I remember right after the year after Pulse happened, we might have talked about this when I was in Share the Chair, but the week of Pulse, I was invited to a press conference with lots of other religious people, other clergy people, or people from other faiths, and everybody stood up talking about their tradition, stated that loving God and however we see God and loving neighbor is really the foundation of every single faith. And so the next year, at the 1-year mark of the Pulse tragedy, many of us got together at a Methodist church downtown, which is real close to the Pulse site as well as my church is. But we got together and each of those religious leaders talked about it and shared just a brief 2-minute thing about what their tradition says about love. And it really is the core of their religion. Every single one of them, the Baha'i faith was there. There was a Buddhist person there. There was a Jewish rabbi there. There was an imam there, all kinds of, and it was just this incredible night of everybody saying it really, everything is boiled down to love.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that Sunshine Cathedral in purposeful ways includes all, because you're right, Darrell, if you're saying something and you're speaking someone's language that not everybody's speaking, you do have the opportunity to reach somebody that many of the others of us may not. And what a beautiful thing to embrace others instead. It's really not a competition.
And if I have some sort of negative preconceived idea about Hindus or Muslims or whoever, it's not a big stretch for me to think about people who've made those same leaps of judgments against queer people. And they were ill-informed and they didn't know anything about us. And, that should make us maybe a little more sensitive to these issues, that we know what it's like to be judged right out of the gate. And so hopefully by being respectful to other traditions, that also lessens maybe some of our own prejudices. Would like to hope. Well, Kevin, ask us something else.
All right. This comes from someone, and I kind of get a feeling I know your answer. Do you believe the miracles in the Bible happened? It seems like you don't.
Wow.
Terry.
It was from
Anonymous.
Wrote in.
Anonymous.
It's from the list. It's from the
Yes.
list of it.
It seems like you don't.
Yeah.
I know that's a bit of
It seems
shame.
like, well, it depends on which one. Here's the thing. Literature is symbolic and allegorical and metaphorical and full of images. And so if I say it's raining cats and dogs, do I believe that cats and dogs are falling from the sky? No. Do I believe that the saying it's raining cats and dogs means something? It means it's raining very hard. Well, I have no trouble believing that is true. So it's a question that's too narrow for me to answer. I just can't say yes or no, is what I'm saying.
Right.
So do I believe that Jonah lived for 3 days in a fish? Well, I've got some doubts. I don't mind telling you. But do I think that story says something powerful and true and wonderful? And and I happen to know that was an Eastern idiom. It's like being between a rock and a hard place. To be in a belly and a fish means to be faced with something you don't want to face. And I believe that people are faced with things they don't want to face. And sometimes they are forced to do things by circumstances that they would never otherwise choose to do. And I also know that in that story, Jonah, the Assyrians, which is where Nineveh is, it's the capital of the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians are their enemy, their oppressors. He does not want to do anything for the Assyrians. So he's telling the Assyrians, God's going to get you, God's going to get you. And then God doesn't get him. And so then he's very sad. He crawls up with a weed in the desert and starts crying because God didn't kill the people he told was out to kill him. And he even fusses at God, shakes his fist at God and says, I knew you were a God of mercy. Just mad about it. Just pissed off. I knew you were a God of mercy and all loving, slow to anger and whatnot and what have you and this, that, and the other. So all of that rings true for me. And someone doesn't have to lease an apartment and a fish for that to be true for me. So yeah, I mean, there's some details of stories that I don't take too literally, and that for me does not diminish the stories at all. The stories can be true for me even if they are not factual. So for me, a miracle is a change of perception from fear to love. And I experienced miracles in my life. I've experienced many, I've seen many. And I think the writers who've given these stories, they saw change in people's attitudes, change in people's viewpoint, change in people's hearts. And they wrote beautiful, powerful stories about those changes. And I believe those changes do happen. So I believe in the biblical miracles. Do I believe they happened factually, historically, exactly as described? Well, I have some doubts about some of them, maybe even most of them. But I don't doubt that they're true. It's like that old Native American storytelling technique that would begin, I don't know if it happened just this way, but I know that it's absolutely true. And that's how I feel.
Say that. That's good.
Yes. So that's how I feel about a lot of those stories. You know, Peter stepping out a little prematurely and then being and then almost sort of being overwhelmed and drowned by doubts and fears, and Jesus pulling back up. All of that rings true for me, whether or not anyone has ever taken a step on top of water. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So the miracle stories are precious to me, and I may doubt the historicity or physics of some of them.
So since this is Christians and Cocktails, what about that water to wine?
That's the gospel
just
truth
kidding.
right there.
Question, Robert.
The miracle was tending bar, and that's the truth. All right. Anyone else on the miracles?
On the miracles.
Miracles? Nobody else?
Maybe just a little offshoot of that. I remember one time talking to a friend years ago, and they had the nerve back then to say to me, well, your Bible myths, this, and that. I now embrace that phrase because it's not meant to be harmful. It's meant to say that we may be telling an allegorical story, and it doesn't make it any less powerful.
The priestly editors of the scriptures were geniuses, I think. And I think they tried to discourage overt literalism. And in fact, for most of Jewish and Christian history, literalism wasn't even a thing. But I think the priestly editors intentionally tried to steer us away from that. We have two creation stories on page 1 and page 2 of the Bible. They're not even, they're written at different times by different people, and the priestly editors have put them side by side. They can't both be factual. They differ in details too much. I mean, radically. And so, but they're both in there as if we're to think they are true. Well, they can't be true. They can't both be true if they have to be factual, because they can't both be factual. Even if one of them is, the other then isn't. And so the story of creation happening in one order where light even precedes the things that make light, or in another order, one where a man comes first and then a woman later, the other where man and woman are created at the same time. This one, it's out of the earth. This one, it's out of nothing. This one, there's some duplicity and a chatty snake, and they get in trouble. The other one, creation and everything in it is good, and God calls it very good. They differ in detail dramatically. One is sort of agrarian, the other sort of cosmic and philosophical. They differ greatly, and I think they are both true. Even though I doubt if either of them are factual. And certainly they can't both be factual. And so I think that our first 2 pages of the Bible give us a clue about how we are meant to deal with this. We are to not settle for the cheap facts. I think we're to dig for the deeper truths.
Cool.
Tito. What else we got?
So the coronavirus, the crisis, has me feeling abandoned by God. Is it okay for me to be angry with God? And how can I get my faith back?
I usually ask people to follow up on whatever thought I have. I'm just going to punt entirely though, because I don't know how you get faith back. In fact, the Apostle Paul said that faith is a gift, and I don't know how you can even beat yourself up for a gift you weren't given. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know that everyone gets the gift of faith. And I think that Thomas shows us that true spirituality can involve profound doubts and being honest about it. And the psalmist, you know, the 22nd Psalm, my God, why have you abandoned me? Came to Jesus' mind when he was feeling in a rough way. Why? But then if you read through the 22nd Psalm, the psalmist is talking it out, thinking it out, and starts remembering times that God did show up. And then by the end, it's like, oh, right, you haven't abandoned me. In fact, future generations will call me blessed. And so that's just what I know to do with things like that, with my doubts. It's just to sit with them, to be honest about them, to see where they take me. If you want to shed them and just replace that with something that feels more secure, I really need someone else to answer that, because I don't have that for you. Cue for anyone else. Someone's having a dark night of the soul. What they're feeling like God's not there for them. What can they do?
Well, the first question is it okay to be angry with God?
Right.
That one's easier. Yes. It is. God can take it, right? And you're probably angry with a concept of God that was given to you.
Right.
And all pictures of God are blurred and inadequate anyway. So be mad at that picture. Who cares? So that part is easy. Doubt God, be afraid of God, be angry at God, be disappointed in God. And by confronting that with some honesty, I think that one you will work through. Just like, if I was really mad at Kevin, I said, Kevin, I'm so mad at you, I can't stand it. I will probably almost immediately start to feel better. And then when we start talking it out, it probably just won't last that long. Whereas if I just sat on it, I might grow to hate Kevin and dream about choking him in his sleep and, whatever. So yeah. So to name it is actually probably the first step in healing it. So yeah, be mad at God. Who cares?
Admission is the first step. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
God's a big girl. She can take it.
That's right.
And I guess, just I'll go the Baptist route here on this a little bit, that part of where, our faith in God begins. So if we feel that we are lacking that part of that faith, or our faith has fallen short, where that's the trust moment. We just have to trust that everything will work out for the good, and know that we're being held in love and affirmed, and just know sometimes you just can't predict it, and you just got to step by faith, and that's that faith walk. That's the Baptist. I'll stop there.
Well, and you do, and to say it. I mean, whether you're naming your anger and your frustration, or whether you are affirming possibilities and hope that you don't 100% feel yet. Either way, I think can be good. The one that feels right for you. The first fake it till you make it person. We think that's some genius, pop psychology thing that we came up with. Actually, a Moravian pastor said that to John Wesley forever ago. When John Wesley was having a crisis, was having a crisis of faith, and asked a friend of his who was a Moravian pastor, how can I possibly preach faith when I don't have any right now? And the answer was, preach faith until you have it, and then preach faith because you have it.
Right. And I think the anger part isn't necessarily with, like you said, with a figure of God that you may have been given when you were a child. Probably more angry at the situation or the circumstances that you're in than God herself, himself, itself.
Theirself.
Theirself, right. So
if God is pulling the plug or working marionette strings, well then you're gonna be mad every time something's unfair.
Right.
That's right.
I think it depends on their perception of what they think the situation is. If they believe that God has caused this virus and this situation, and maybe they can turn it around and look at it a different way. Maybe God didn't cause the situation, but all the good things that are happening around the situation are caused by God, such as the doctors and the nurses and the little kids that are drawing rainbows. If you look at it a different way, maybe they won't feel mad at God anymore. Right.
50 years ago, if this had happened, we wouldn't be doing this. We wouldn't be continuing our ministries like this on the internet because we didn't have it.
Right.
So yeah, there's some, and I mean, it doesn't work for everyone, but for me, when things are gone, to look at what's left. When things are difficult, to look at what we've learned. when things are really difficult, look at how we survived, and how we helped others do that. So, but that's that change of perception. That's where the miracles are for me. Hagar, when she was looking down, she's in a wilderness alone with her baby going to die in the desert. She hears an angel's voice and looks up. She changes her perspective. There's a well in the wilderness, and that's her salvation. So when you change your perspective, you see more than you saw before, and that new vision is where the new opportunities are.
And I think also, just keep in mind, just, a person that really the globe knew, and to read her book after she died, Mother Teresa, a person obviously seemed of faith and all the wonderful stuff she did, and she struggled, and I think, just think about her life and what we saw as she lived it is a reminder that still, even people who seem rooted, it is okay to question. It's okay to be angry. It is okay to be mad. And I think Mother Teresa left us that gift, that it's okay to question God.
The hand-picked Apostle Thomas said, "Show me." I think it's fine. And Thomas, by the doubter, was also the only one that when Jesus said, "Okay, I need to go see Lazarus," and everyone's like, "No, they're out to get you. We better not go." And Thomas is the only one that said, "Let us go with him, even if we die with him." That the people who have courage to doubt have courage to do other things too.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the Thomas thing gets the bad rap. Thomas merely asked for what the other disciples got without asking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so he's like, I need to see it to believe it. Well, y'all didn't believe it till you saw it.
Exactly.
He gets the bad rap of like, you weren't there and you missed it all. Well, they didn't believe it either till Jesus walked through the door, and then here he is. And then so he does.
And why was he out of the room? Because they were in hiding. He was the one out of the closet, out doing the work, out doing business, out getting groceries to bring back to them. He was the one taking risks to begin with. So excuse him if a bunch of grief-stricken people in hiding, have what he assumes is some sort of grief-induced, hallucination or whatever. It was not ridiculous of him to say, "Okay, good for you. If I have it, I'll be with you." But it was, there's a lot more to that story than we usually hear. We've got about 4 minutes, I see, which could be 5 or 6. We're not really whatever. But let's try to take one more. So if Reverend Terry, you get to pick our very last question of the night.
I'm going to pick this one. Religion has been so mean and abusive. Why not just leave it behind?
Wow. Yeah.
Before you answer, Darrell, because I'm glad you asked it, because I want to ask that same question. And I want to punt it to both of you, because with that question, we see so many people who are making comments on church's thread that are threatening, that are abusive, and yada, yada. I mean, the list goes on. It seems like the more you get the good news out there, the more people want to attack it. And so my question, I would kind of not rephrase it, but what is it that we're triggering in people that is making them seem that religion is so abusive, when, what the heck is going on?
My first response to those people, unless they're just, really coming for your throat, my first response is, you've clearly had a really unpleasant experience with religion, and I'm sorry.
Right.
And a lot of times they've clearly not watched the broadcast. They saw a word. They either saw if they're homophobic, they saw the word gay and they went for that. Or if they're angry atheists, not just atheists, but angry atheists, they saw the word church and they went for that. And if they're gay atheists, they're like, "You're really fools. God rejected you. Why do you have a minute for God? Blah, blah, blah." And this is all pain. This is all pain, because religion has been weaponized. Right. And I think that's why we offer I think that's why we do what we do. Because you always had the option to walk away. That's the thing. And you had an option to stay and not challenge anything and just, be part of the broken system. So those two options you always had. We're trying to offer a third option. Let's try to redeem religion. Let's try to fix what was broken so that we can affirm and help and heal people and bring them together. And if I had a really terrible family, that doesn't mean I don't want a good one. If I lived in a really terrible country, it doesn't mean I wouldn't like to find a good one. So if I had a really horrible experience of religion, that doesn't mean that there can't be a good one. We're just trying to, I think, help people have the option, and you can decline it. But we want to offer you the option of a joyful religious experience. Maybe we'll fail at it, but that is certainly our attempt. That is our intent.
Right. Well, for me, I think it goes back to the with Darrell talking about, even from the beginning of the Bible, in the first 2 pages, we have conflicting stories about creation. And I loved what you said, Darrell. It's about just giving us the idea that we're going to have to dig a little deeper to get an understanding. I think if we move to the New Testament and we see the life of Jesus and his ministry throughout that 3 years, religion killed him. Literally, I mean, it was him going against the establishment, going against religion as they knew it, going against this whole sacrificial system. And I think Jesus was letting us know then religion can be a horrible thing that can be hateful and mean-spirited and miss the whole point of all that God was trying to do from beginning to end. But I think I believe I 100% agree with Darrell that our task is to redeem it for the people that it does work. It won't work for everybody, and I'm not here to say that it should even, but for those that need it and for those that can find some kind of hope, help, and healing in it, that's what we do every day, every week, every month to try to redeem it. We did a sermon series at the beginning of the year based on Rachel Held Evans' book Inspired, and my point was, let's learn to love the Bible again. Yes, it has been used against us and we've been beaten, clobbered by it, but let's find the hope that really is there. There is no thing that separates us from the love of God. The scripture says that too. And that gets lost in all the other stuff that they're throwing at us. That the Bible said this about homosexuals and whatever. And we lose the whole purpose. And it goes back to the very first question we ask. Everything boils down to love. And if that's what we're doing, yes, sometimes love hurts, but love ultimately heals and love ultimately prevails.
Saul of Tarsus, when he was tormenting people, was on religion's payroll. And when he had a change of heart, it's religion that he used to heal people. He used religion to hurt, and then he had a change of heart and used religion to heal. And so I just think that that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to take what used to be bad and make it good. Jesus, not only the Bible, but Jesus himself has been so weaponized. And even hearing the name of Jesus is a trigger for a lot of people. And I used to dance around that because I didn't want to offend people. I didn't want to hurt people's feelings. I didn't want them to come running out or call us fundamentalists or whatever. Me a fundamentalist, please. But I don't know if it was 3 or 4 years ago, but I just made a declarative statement. And these things usually happen pretty spontaneously, but when they happen, they tend to take. And I just said in the pulpit, we are reclaiming Jesus.
Yeah. Amen.
And that has become a guiding principle for us in the years. I don't think we're any less progressive. I don't think we're any less inclusive. I'm just like, we're just not going to let Jesus take it on the chin because some people used him as a weapon.
That's right.
That wasn't his choice, and we're going to redeem Jesus, and so that's what we're trying to do. And again, if you want, people always say, well, really, I'm Catholic or Mormon or Baptist to the core, and I still go to church with my family. I just come visit you every once in a while. That's working for you. God bless you. And other people, I just think you're morons for being religious, and I gave all that up. If that's making you happy, whatever, bless you. But for people who are still looking for something and you haven't found it in unquestioning tradition or in dumping it all at once, if there's a third path you're looking for, we're trying really, really hard to be that for you.
Be that. Amen.
Well, I think we're going to wrap there, and thank you for the panel for being with us tonight. And I was monitoring along with Tito. There's a lot of chatter on our thread tonight, so somebody's going to have to go back and respond to that chatter. We'll probably pull some questions for the next week. I saw several questions that we just didn't get a chance to get to tonight, but we will pull them and put them in queue. But thank you for joining us online. Darrell, just before everyone does that parting thought, and I come back to them, why don't you tell everyone about our Share in the Chair guest this week, Reverend Sherry James?
You want to be with us 6 o'clock Eastern Wednesday on Facebook Live. We are going to be interviewing the Reverend Sherry James. Sherry James is the pastor of Up Church in Inglewood, California. Up stands for Understanding Principles. It was the church founded by the late Della Reese. And so I believe Sherry James herself is a filmmaker turned pastor, and she's just fascinating and a wonderful speaker. She was in a documentary film called As a Man Thinketh. So I'm so excited to be talking with her. So you'll want to join at 6 p.m. Eastern Wednesday for Sharing the Chair to meet the Reverend Sherry James.
Great. All right, we'll start with our parting thoughts and wrap it up. Tito, we'll start with you first.
Oh, I had one. Let me see what it was.
He had one that's live, honey.
I just had one thought.
Just one, honey.
I think it goes back to what Darrell was saying about religion and how it's hurt a lot of people, and how if some people just don't want to deal with religion, then that's fine. And I used to be one of those people. At age 16, I left the Catholic Church, and I didn't want to step foot in another church again until someone over here made me go to Sunshine Cathedral.
No. I didn't make you.
Invited.
I found my way to Sunshine Cathedral because of this one. And the first couple of weeks, I was like, I'm not going. And finally, I was like, you know what? I'll give it a chance. I still believed in God. I had my own God. And I prayed to my own God and had that relationship. But yeah, some of those people just like I wasn't ready, they may not be ready. And someday, hopefully, they will be if it's something that they're looking for. And Sunshine Cathedral is a great place for that.
Dennis.
Also, Joy MCC. It's in the name, Joy.
That's right. We've been saying we want to go visit you.
Yeah, we
church.
have to come to Orlando. So I'm excited about that. My thought about the Sunshine Cathedral and about this particular venue, I love this, that we get to dig deeper than what we hear on Sunday mornings. We all have questions. We all have doubts. We all don't know all the answers. None of us know all the answers. And we're all searching. And I love that about the Sunshine Cathedral, is that we allow people to do their own searching. We don't tell them, this is what you got to think. This is what you got to believe. And this is just one of those outlets that gives us the chance to help us do our own searching. So I love Christians and Cocktails.
Great. Reverend Kevin.
I've got a couple of thoughts, but I'm going to share this one. I remember years ago when Darrell was our pastor up in New Jersey, and he was doing a couple of classes on preaching. And somebody had mentioned, well, I wrote a sermon long time ago. I'm just going to pull it back out. And he said, no, you really can't do something like that. The Bible is organic in the sense that it meets us where we are. And where we were back then may not be where we are today. So we should take the time to look at what the words are and see how it fits into our lives today. So that's what I've always, and listening to tonight's conversation, it just brought that back up, that, yeah, you can be angry at God for whatever reason you might have. And tomorrow when you wake up, you might see that the universe has unfolded in a different way. So you see things differently. So I love the ability that we have at our church to look at things in many different ways and not say that this is the only way things can be. So I am grateful for that.
All righty, Reverend Terry Pierce, the Senior Minister of Joy, MCC in Orlando, Florida, aka Charles Nelson Reilly.
I'm very grateful to be Charles Nelson Reilly. I watched that show too. Darrell and I are the same age, so I watched the Match Game thing too, and I knew he was very different, and it was very clear to me before I had language that he was gay, and I'm just grateful that he was out there and they let him be as gay as he could be. And I'm grateful that Sunshine Cathedral does the hard things, that they ask the questions and they allow people to be exactly who they are, and no question is off the table. And what courage that takes to say things that people may have never heard before, or go to places people have never gone or were willing to go before. But I'm grateful, lastly, for the steadfast love of God, that mercies never cease. They're new every morning. Mm-hmm. And so whenever I'm doubting or discouraged or whatever, I can wake up to the weeping endures for the night, but joy really does come in the morning.
Amen. Well, thank you everyone for being with us tonight, both on the panel and also on Facebook Live World. And we thank you for being a part of the Sunshine Cathedral, where we are living into being America's queer church for all. So thank you for being with us this evening. And one last toast to everyone. Glad
Cheers.
you're with us. Cheers. Join us for all the other programming. Everything is listed on the Sunshine Cathedral website at sunshinecathedral.org. Good night. And thank you again, Reverend Terry, for being with
Yes,
us.
thank you, Terry.
Nelson Reilly.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Night.
Bye.